in your specific case, you're making this part of a lifestyle career part of you.
I mean, this
You're
is not a
becoming
career. Let me just clarify, okay?
but you're doing what Glenn is doing in your own
I'm
level right
definitely
now.
not. And so, like, I want to distinguish myself from Glenn. I think this is important because you brought that up before. You said that before. I really want
Yeah.
to clarify this point. I think it's very important. I'm definitely not doing what Glenn's doing. And the reason why I'm not doing that is because I am not making any profit off of doing this work. I've been doing it for 4 years. I am not
Mm.
even trying to make profit off of it. Any money that I get sent, I pour back into creating events where I purchase food and drink for the people who are attending, or I purchase a venue or something like that. I am not enriching myself
I,
off of
I, I
this.
laud you for that, but the difference from my point of view of being influential in what in expressing and selling what you want to sell is the same in my view, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I
but I
think
just
you
don't think it's
both.
accurate. I just
Well,
don't think that's accurate.
yeah, it's difference in how I look at Glenn than how you look at Glenn.
Well, I want you to look at me differently than you're looking at me, brother. I don't want you to look at me as selling something. I'm not selling. What have I tried to sell you since we've been
but
having this conversation? We've been talking for 90 minutes. What have I
but
tried to
I
sell you?
but I still don't know what you mean by racial hierarchy.
Oh, okay, well then ask. Right? I talk
What
about
do you
it
mean by
almost.
racial
All
hierarchy?
right, there we go.
All right.
Well, what I mean by when I say racial hierarchy, right, is literally the history of the racial categories. White used to be white, black, yellow, red. You know, we used to literally be coloring people like we're using crayons, right? And that those colors were put on a literal pyramid. And when I say literal, I mean this was mapped out. It was
When
diagrammed.
when was this?
I mean, this is I'm trying to think of the exact year that.
You don't have to be exact, just roughly.
Well, this is like back in the originally like the mid to late 1600s is when this first started becoming
Okay.
popularized. Okay,
Okay.
and that was with British expeditions to Africa, right, where a
Mm.
lot of the British found themselves. Even back then, they were finding token black people who they could who would write disparaging things about other black people. And that's exactly what they did. They did an expedition to Africa. They sent a black person there who had a lot of ideals put in their head that of superiority and inferiority, and they wrote about feeling superior. And that book was then taken by the British and published widely and spread across the entire world to create this image of black inferiority. And out of that spawned an entire academic field where that inferiority was then tried to be justified by science. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of people found that to be compelling. And it was kind of the basis for this pyramid, this racial hierarchical pyramid. And it was a
And to
justification for the American slavery eventually.
and today you'd have to be a bigot to believe anything like that. You'd have to want to believe the worst of something. That's not America today.
Well, brother, I wish that were true.
That doesn't mean that there isn't people who have a prejudicial and will act in a discriminating way. That is, to some degree, that's everywhere, and certainly here. I don't defend that at all.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
But
think you would. I don't think that's part of your
but
values that you
but
stated.
the unconscious demonstration of the change in people's sensibilities regarding all of that, and bear with me, I'm going to repeat myself here, uh, but it was so striking to me. I loved it. Just again, picture, you could see the movie number 42 about Jackie Robinson. Believe me, it was worse than the movie portrays. And then go on to YouTube, go to the 2019 Masters tournament, the fourth round, and take a look at Tiger Woods walking across that green and looking in the background is this sea of white, just absolutely ecstatic and so thrilled for this person who they love and admire so much. In 1950 through the 50s and 60s, every one of those people for the most part would have choked it down and hid it. Even if they felt it, they wouldn't want to have admitted it. How, it sounds terrible to say how far we come, because it sounds, there's a bit of a final tone about that. I don't mean it that way. Human beings are so capable of such crap relative to other human beings. And that was so terrible. And today, as a white American, I don't have to feel embarrassed about America as a whole. Now, I acknowledge what you're saying, and others have plenty of stories, and there's still, as Woodson or all of those guys would say, there's still miles to go. But the only way to get there is changing minds and hearts, and that takes positive um, interchange and discourse, and effort, and being being positive about it and pursuing it. It'll never go anywhere as long as we're all stuck in needing somehow to keep bringing this into attention. I'm not afraid to hide it. I'm not afraid to study it. I'm not hiding from it at all. But there's some good in discussing it the way you and I are. But when we go out on the street tomorrow, when you go into class, when I go to do whatever I'm going to do, I'm not going to be dealing and confronting and expressing any of this. I'm going to be the best person I can be, and I'm going to have a smile on my face for everyone. And if a woman drops a package, I'm going to pick it up, help her pick it up, regardless of anything. And we have to get our minds into that healthy state, and shunt off the horrible stuff that comes into our minds. We can't let that drag us down. So, as I use the example too, when my neighbor's kids, and even I don't think Mark ever did this, but I remember our neighbor kids did. They came home complaining the teacher didn't like, but the Peter, the one fella, the teacher doesn't like me. I can't do this. And somehow I had to motivate and inspire Peter to go back into the class and do the best he can and do better, and to be, he had to do what he had to do regardless of anything. And that the good of it was he was learning how to deal with somebody he was having trouble dealing with, and that was an accomplishment too. And Peter did go back, and Peter did finish the class, and it all went away. We can't get dragged down by this stuff.
Well, unfortunately,
Talking
brother.
about it is what you and I are doing. I don't mean that you're
No,
dragging me
I know
down,
what you meant. I knew what you meant.
but
But
I'm not going to accept anybody coming in. Children in my own family have had their excuses for negative thoughts and what have you, and I refuse to give into it.
of
I
course,
haven't.
listen,
I,
not giving in, persevering, that is such a important quality for every person to have. If it's necessary for growth as a human, right? But what you have to understand is, like you said, he got through that class and it went away, right? That is not what racism ever does for racialized black people. Racism literally never does that. So we are not experiencing things the same way. At a certain point, that has to come into people's understanding in order for you to have a true understanding of this issue. We don't experience the same things. So that is why you probably have the
well,
conception and the perception of the issue that you have, because you're not experiencing it, brother. It is constant and consistent, and it's lifelong. My
I
parents are still experiencing racial discrimination, having swam in segregated pools and called me
I don't
N-words and all
I
this
don't
stuff.
deny that. I don't deny
Okay,
that
so
for a
all I'm
second. I'm
saying is
sure
that there
you're
is
right.
no it goes away for us. There is no it goes away. So under those circumstances, we don't have the same choices that the person that you were talking about has. And that's
But
important for you to recognize.
do all black people uh, agree with what you just said, or will some black people have objections to what you just said? And what would those objections be?
I think that I don't know. I don't want to put words or thoughts into people's mouths. I don't think every black person is going to agree with what I just said because black people are not a monolith. We're tens of millions of people who have various different experiences. Right? So I don't think that there's one black consciousness that we can point to and say. I'm just telling you my perspective, my personal perspective.
Okay.
I'm not trying to speak for all black people whatsoever. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.